Sakucho. I like that. Mikami.
良いこと悪いことを判断できる正義感の強い子であった。そしてテルは平均的な日本人より明らかに多くの不幸、死を目の当たりにしてきた人間である。
Look at that. Now, yeah, this is interesting, man. Really late in the game, I'm getting backstories for new characters and stuff. Like, that's certainly a choice. Bit of bullying going on here.
この世界には悪と正義しかない。幼い頃から周囲を観察していた私が最初に掴んだ真実だ。人間は悪い人間と良い人間、すべてこの2種類に分類される。
Pretty clear cut.
悪には立ち向かわなければならない。時には正義が負けているようにも見えただろう。
Okay.
しかし、どんな目に遭おうと私は喜びを感じていた。
ありがとう。
被害者のその言葉だけで私は何度でも助けたいと思った。
Oh, look at this. Oh, he's gonna step in. Yeah.
しかし、それも子供の世界だけの話だった。
Yeah. Then it gets a bit interesting after, right?
正義は貫かなければならない。
Sakujo.
そのためには悪を削除するしかない。
Delete evil. I like.
そんな私の唯一の理解者であり、味方なのは女で一つで私を育てた母だった。
Oh, mother.
そんな怪我までさせられることないのよ。バカを見るだけよ。あなた一人が頑張ったって何か。
母親は間違っていた。正義ではなかった。削除されるべき側の人間だった。そして奇跡は起こった。
No. Oh boy.
加害者であった4人が無免許運転で暴走し、全員が死亡。巻き込まれた一般人のうち1名が死亡。その1名が母だった。どこにでも必ず存在価値のない、いや、その存在が害となる悪がいる。そして成人に近くなるほど改心させることは望めなくなる。そのために私は検事になった。検事は悪を裁く正義であり、私の転職。そう思った。
But yeah, you can only take that.
そんな時、神が舞い降りた。今まで自分の周りで起こったことは偶然ではない。神の裁きだったのだ。できる限り神の目に留まる場所へ出向いた。そしてやはり神は私を認めてくれていた。そればかりか、神の力を分け与えてくれたのだ。キラが望むことを察し、キラであれば行うことを行う。
Yeah, he's not too far off.
削除、削除、削除、削除、削除、削除、削除、削除、削除、削除、
削除。It's quite catchy.
僕もこの状態では動けない。どうする三上。
He'll find
キラは
someone.
何も言ってこない。やはり今は動けぬ状態か。しかし今が大事な時。
Nicely done.
キラの思想を広める代弁者は必須。ならばこちらから。
He'll appoint someone. And who is this? Whoa.
この女。
Whoa.
高田清美。
こんばんは。
Kara?
ニュース6高田清美です。
間違いない。この子はライト君の大学時代。
Okay, so this is
対処が早いな
suspicious.
三上。しかし彼女と僕が関係を持っていることはすぐに。
高田清美、かつて討論番組に出た時に話したことがある。立場上そつなく司会をこなしていたが、キラ問題に触れると目の色が変わった。彼女は犯罪、社会悪を憎む一種独特ともいえる厳しい考えを持っていた。
Much like yourself though, right? Pretty strict, good or evil.
彼女は明らかにキラ寄りの考え方を持っている。彼女こそキラの代弁者として最もふさわしい報道陣だ。
Interesting that he calls her rigid,
高田
but
清美。
she's much like Kira.
彼女を代弁者に選ぶのは目立ちすぎる。
kind of
皆さん
evens out, right? Because it's a little too
高田清美
suspicious.
を使えないかと思っています実は彼女とは大学時代にかなり親しくしていた仲なんです
へえ。
自分から隠す気はないということか。
僕は彼女の今の携帯番号も知っていますし僕が会ってほしいと言えば必ず会ってくれます
すごい自信だね。さすがライト君。
さすが。
大学時代に彼女といろいろ話しましたが
Now is he gonna reveal to her that he is Kira?
キラ崇拝者ですでも逆にそこにつけ込むこともできる高田さん、八神です
八神くん久しぶりね何か
Instant blush.
大事な話があるんだ会ってもらえないかな頼みたいことがあって今世界が注目している女性に僕なんかが会ってくれと言っても無理かもしれないけど
Great shot.
でもそうでもなければ八神くんが連絡してくることもなかったんじゃないかしら
そうだね大学を出てからは話したくても話すきっかけがなかったでもこうしてお互い社会人として仕事を通じてでもきっかけができたのならそこに運命を感じずにはいられない
話によっては協力しかねるかもしれないけど
ありがとうまずは会って話を聞いてもらうだけで
This tone he's taking.
どこかで二人だけでわかった僕がホテルを取るよ
でもいいのかしら
いやそれが彼女は僕のパートナーとしては知性が足りなくて
もっち
はい
料理も上手だし何でもしてくれてミサ楽だけどもう5日よ。
はい
これライトに秘密なんでしょ。浮気するかもって思うのが普通じゃん。絶対やきもち焼くって。
こ
Whoa.
の女が第二のキラだとニアたちは教えてきたがしかしこの天然のバカ女が本当に
Oh.
もしキラが私と連絡を取りたくても取れない状況にあるとしたらまずは高田と接触するはず
キラはその存在が害であると判断したもののみならず能力ある人間がその能力を社会貢献に生かさず
Whoa.
無駄に生きることを許しません
怠け者は殺すってことか。
嘘だろ。
やりすぎだ三上いやまだ早すぎる
Lazy people.
や
See,
はり
that's
ど
a
うしても
slippery
三
slope.
上とコンタクト会いたかった
Matsui.
失礼
早く切り出さないと怪しまれる。
井出さん、恋愛したことないんですか？
どうだ。
いいムードです。
そういうことじゃなくて。
The mood's good.
キラの代弁者を個人的に呼び出せるものそのものと電話を交われ
電話を
Oh boy, this should be
お
interesting.
前を選んだのはやはり正解だよし三上どこまで悟れている
神は今身動きが取れない。
はい
今を監視されている。
はいあなたは本当にキラなんですか桜テレビですか
桜テレビ。なんとしても
Okay, we'll do it live.
三上はいお前は期待以上だ
何？盗聴器を外す？
仕方がない。
これで
And
気兼ね
now?
なく話せる
Go on.
いいかい清美僕がキラなんだ清美に僕が誰なのか聞くようなことは一切許さない
はいあとは神の召すまま
あなたは私の人生の中で私が認め
Oh
尊
man.
敬できた唯一の男性そのあなたがキラなんてすごすぎる
Yeah,
君も
it's perfect for her.
新世界の女神になるんだ
Oh man.
八神くん
He certainly knows how to rope him in.
はい高田さんがうまく取りなしてくれました僕は今後も彼女と付き合う形を取りキラを探ろうと思います
削除削除削除
Sakura.
削除
Sakura. Whoa. Killing frenzy. Oh. Okay, so episode 32. Only 5 to go. You know, I've got to say, it feels like this needs more than 5 more episodes, given all the moving pieces at this point in time, especially the newly introduced moving pieces. And, you know, these pieces are, substantial, right? They are substantial because, you know, if you see that, shit, just bit my tongue. But you see that at this point in time, Kira, or Light Yagami, is finally surrounding himself with, people that are actually quite a substantial aid to his cause, to his crusade, right? Misa ended up helping him out as well, but, that wasn't by choice. He reluctantly kind of had to take Misa in, right? Because, if he doesn't have control of Misa, he cannot have that loose cannon out there. But yes, eventually she did end up being useful to Light. Not anymore, though. Not anymore. But, I'll get to Misa in a bit. But, now he's kind of got this little group going, right? The cult of Kira, essentially. He's this god figure. And then, he's got the mouthpiece, the voice of God in Kiyomi Takada, coming back in from earlier in the series, right? Part of me thinks it's kind of cool that someone from so long ago is kind of coming back in. But part of me also thinks it's kind of, really convenient, right? Kind of just fell in his lap. That this person just happens to be, Kiyomi Takada, who was really interested in Light Yagami, and she still is. Apparently he's the only man she's ever admired. So, it kind of fell in his lap. So, in that sense, that lucky aspect is coming back into play again, right? Remember, from like first half of this series, I used to say, okay, he catches like a lot of luck. A lot of things just kind of fall in his lap. This is a case of that as well, right? So in that sense, you can see that the tables have turned once again. This is starting to go back to old Light Yagami, right? The one that was easily able to kind of confuse people and trick people, right? Bamboozle people, keep them at arm's distance quite easily. So yeah, this is Light Yagami at his best again, I'd say. And he has no substantial interest in romancing anyone, but you see, once it's needed, right? If it's something that has to be done, he's pretty good at it, right? He's charming, he's smooth, he knows just the right things to say, right? He really knows how to rope them in. So he certainly has that quality about him. But also, as I'm saying that, kind of almost feels like I'm describing a serial killer, right? Because a lot of real life serial killers, or not a lot, but some of them do have that quality about them, if you can call it a quality, right? Or that tactic, that they are charming, they are smooth. But yeah, beyond that, he has that about him. He's able to manipulate. He's a master manipulator, essentially. And yeah, Kiyomi Takada fell right into his arms, as expected. Again, he knows how to rope them in, right? And he promised her that she's going to be the goddess of this new world that he's building, right? Much like he promised Misa all that time ago. He quite easily discarded her in this episode. In fact, in the writing of the show, they're not really beating around the bush either, right? They're straight up just calling her stupid. They're really questioning her intelligence, or the lack of intelligence. You see, even Mello made a quick appearance, more of a cameo, really. He thought she was incredibly stupid, and how could she possibly ever be the second Kira, right? In that sense, actually, before I move on, Mello, I guess there was something skipped here, right? I mean, it's clear that, yeah, he was able to, track her down. He had prior information about her being the second Kira from Nier and others, as he mentioned. But, they kind of skipped over how he got in there or how he was able to bug the place, right? I guess you don't really need to see that. It's kind of, that scene alone kind of describes it or explains it, but you could tell that things had to be cut, right? That's why I also mentioned earlier, I feel like this needs more than 5 episodes. Because, I'm trying to see how it's going to be wrapped up in 5 episodes. I mean, it's going to have to move at a crazy pace in these next 5 episodes, I think. Again, especially because of the newly introduced characters, right? And the moving pieces. Though, of course, these newly introduced characters might end up playing a part in his downfall eventually, right? Because, of course, he's opened up his circle a bit. Now he has people helping him that are actually, you know, quite useful to his cause, right? And he doesn't have to worry about them being loose cannons like Misa. But at the end of the day, they are still people that know he's Kira. Though, I mean, Mikami doesn't know he's Kira, and Mikami doesn't seem to care, right? He doesn't want to know the identity of God. There's a moment I found really funny as, you know, Mikami's on one side of the phone trying to, you know, confirm, oh, is this Kira I'm speaking to? But he's also trying to figure out if he's under surveillance at the moment, right? So he's like, God? And then Light Yagami's reply, yes, right? But that conversation kind of plays out like that, right? Light can only answer in like one word replies. But yeah, he replied yes to God because he knows this, you know, hand of God, essentially, you know, his right-hand man does consider him a god, right? He looks at him like a god. But yeah, circling back to Misa before I move on, you know, again, you know, earlier from the series, I did have hopes that maybe as some sort of character development or, you know, later in her character arc, she might end up playing a role in taking down Light Yagami, right? Or playing a part, right? Even if it wasn't by her choice in taking down Light Yagami. But yeah, you know, that ship sailed a long time ago. Even back then, it was like a really slim chance anyways, right? Given her characterization. She's just been established as this hyper subservient individual who made it clear to Light Yagami that use me, right? Or kill me if you have no use for me. So yeah, you know, as much as I would love for her to still play a part in this, somehow it's not happening, is it? In fact, if she was to find out about Light Yagami and Kiyomi, I think, you know, she would take drastic actions. You know, that it's probably better that she doesn't find out, because I think she does have the mentality and that mindset that, you know, if Light Yagami doesn't want her anymore, I could see her, you know, taking substantial actions, you know, and by that I mean offing herself potentially. So yeah, you know, it really, I mentioned in the last episode that it felt like her arc is complete, you know, that she's not really going to play much of a part in this story anymore, right? Or in the conclusion of this story anymore, especially because, you know, her memories of the Death Note are gone as well. She doesn't even know that Light Yagami is Kira. So yeah, you know, I just don't see any angles of her potentially coming back into the story and doing anything. And yeah, you know, they're not beating around the bush anymore. You've got multiple characters, you know, Mello and Light Yagami himself tossing her aside. You know, she's not intelligent enough, or she doesn't have the brains to be my partner, right? But, you know, once again, the task force kind of falls back into their old habits. And, you know, it's quite a slip up to, you know, to let them be in there. You know, it's major red flags that, you know, somehow, once again, after he's been you know, being suspected of being Kira, or, you know, the possibility has popped up again, somehow, you know, he finds himself in a situation that requires them to, you know, remove the bugs from the room, right? And he's speaking to Kira's spokesperson at this moment. So major red flags, but of course, you know, the task force allowed it. And, you know, Ayazawa mentioned, oh, they have no choice, but it kind of had to keep going on for the story, right? For the sake of the story. I guess you can't really have them shut that down and, you know, just get him out of that room because then, yeah, you kind of lose that plot. But yeah, you know, it is a bit short-sighted to let him have that moment. He's able to figure out that Kira, God, is not able to get in contact at the moment. So he starts to think. He starts to think how God might be thinking and, you know, goes down the right path and deduces that, okay, he would go and get in contact with Kira's spokesperson, right? And yeah, he's perfectly on point. And, you know, he does end up reaching Kira. But yeah, you know, yet another character, but this time it's a reintroduction of a character, but she's been introduced in a much more substantial role since her, you know, first appearance in the series. So yeah, that's two new characters essentially that are introduced really late on, and that does make me think that both of them are going to play a pretty big role, right? In these final 5 episodes. And of course, a lot of the religious symbolism is coming in again, you know, the voice of God, because, you know, you're not gonna speak directly with God, right? Or communicate directly with God. You know, someone is given that position, right? A prophet, essentially. And, you know, it's Kiyomi Takada at this point in time. And then, of course, you know, there's the hand of God. And, you know, God has shared his powers with this hand of God. The right hand of God, essentially, Mikami, who is certainly quite the interesting character. And, I'm happy about that, especially after this episode as well, getting some of his backstory. Because listen, if you're going to introduce a brand new character this late on, it has to be an interesting character, at the least, right? And he certainly is. On one side, you see that he is pretty much just like Light Yagami, right? Just like Kira, his mentality, his outlook, it's pretty airtight, right? But that being said, there are some subtle distinctions, right? There are some subtle distinctions. And I brought up this point in the last episode's discussion, right? There might be points that he deviates from Kira's outlook and philosophy. And you see some of his own philosophy is starting to leak in now, because Kiyomi mentions, right, through her broadcast as the voice of Kira that, these are some of the new things God has to say or Kira has to say, right? People who don't adequately contribute to society are also going to be targeted, right? It's out there. So in that sense, Mikami is supremely confident in his ideology, right? In his position. And of course, they immediately give us a reaction from the public's perspective, essentially. That one man who said, oh, so he's going to start killing lazy people now, huh? And you see Light's reaction to this. He's not really, I was about to say he's not okay with it, but he is, but he just thinks it's too early, right? So, this is the point I was making in the last episode, there is a possibility that he might start deviating, or, his philosophy might deviate a bit, right? Just a bit from Light Yagami's or from Kira's or from God's. But the crucial point being, he just thinks it's too early for this, right? So again, I mentioned a few episodes ago, it's a slippery slope. Again, I gave that example, say he does somehow manage to get rid of all evil people. Again, that in itself is so, that is just a mess in itself, right? Because morality is subjective. And, the whole notion of good and evil is kind of simplistic as well, right? But, in that sense, you look at someone like Mikami, his ideology, his philosophy is pretty airtight. It's pretty basic, pretty straight-edged, right? Good or evil. It's as simple as that, But yeah, going back to Light, if you go back to earlier in the series, really early on in the series, I'm pretty sure he mentioned that, yeah, he is going to target lazy people or people that are of no use to society at some point, right? I think he mentioned that. I believe he did bring something like that up. He might have mentioned it in passing, but he brought that up as well earlier on. So yeah, there's that slippery slope I was talking about. Because even if, somehow you go through that unrealistic process of actually dealing with all evil, it doesn't stop there. It just doesn't. So as expected and as Light Yagami was hoping, Mikami took the initiative and installed a new spokesperson for Kira, right? The new mouthpiece, the voice of Kira, the voice of God. And, he mentioned something interesting at one point that, she had a uniquely rigid outlook on things, right? Strong ideals in terms of, society. And, he wasn't saying that as a negative. He was saying that as a positive, right? That it was in line with his own beliefs, right? And his own ideology, and also Kira's. From another perspective, or if you look at it from another angle, you could argue that Mikami is more Kira than Light Yagami is Kira. He is out here taking out evil, right? Or, what he deems to be evil or perceives to be evil. And this whole concept of, oh, there's people out here that are a threat to others, right? He's defending people, essentially. So yeah, to me, he feels like, or he feels like he's defending people, but to me, it feels like he's more Kira than Light Yagami even. This notion, I think Light Yagami tried to establish really early on in the series. This is what he was trying to establish. But, as the audience, all of us know that Light Yagami has ulterior motives as well, right? His take on it wasn't as simple as, oh, I'm just trying to get rid of evil, right? Of course not. There's more to Light Yagami than that, right? He's got this god complex. I'm not going to go into it again. I've done it a billion times at this point. But, Light Yagami has ulterior motives as well. But, speaking of Mikami, is there another angle that could potentially see him being used, right? As the fall guy, essentially. Could Light Yagami kind of, through Kiyomi, Takada Kiyomi, could he kind of, start setting Mikami up as Kira, right? The Kira, and maybe have him take the fall, right? And the thing is, he doesn't. I feel like maybe he would even be down for that. Someone like Mikami, right? he is devoted to the cause. He is devoted to God. So, maybe he could be used in that manner as well. But yeah, it does give Light an option, doesn't it? Now that he's revealed to Kiyomi that I'm the true Kira, but I've let this, individual, a follower of mine, a fanatic, I've given him the power of Kira, right? But I am the true Kira. So, and he's roped her in as well, right? So you never know. There could be that angle that he could make Mikami the fall guy as the original Kira, right? Set him up as the Kira. But of course, there's a lot of setbacks to that really unlikely but interesting what if situation, right? If Mikami was taken down as the Kira, the original Kira, then Light uses another death note, right, to the police. But there's also another angle, you see how devoted Mikami is. What if he was to find out about the task force, right? And he starts going after the task force. Imagine that. And, he doesn't even know, but he's going after his god, Kira, Light Yagami, who happens to be part of the task force. That could be a fun angle. But again, only 5 episodes left. All these tangents I'm going on. I don't think any of this is going to happen. But, it's fun to still think of these ideas, these possibilities. But yeah, even though I feel like I'm kind of running out of episodes here, and, it might be a bit rushed maybe, I still appreciated some of the backstory of Mikami. Because, if he just came in and I didn't get any sort of backstory, then it would have been, a bit, okay, this character just doesn't make sense to just plop him in there this late on. But yeah, you see just how similar he is to, Kira's philosophy, right? Again, I like I mentioned, he feels more Kira than Kira himself. A strong sense of justice from a really early age. Again, throughout that backstory, I was thinking of nature versus nurture and how that played a part in his psychological development from an early age. Listen, there is something a bit off about him, right? There is something a bit off about him. He thought it was a miracle that his mother died or ended up dying, because she wasn't on his side or she didn't believe in his cause, right? Fighting for people, defending people. And yes, maybe that's not something you want to hear from a parent, right? But she was being realistic. But no, he was happy that she ended up dying. He thought it was a miracle. So again, there's a screw loose in there. But yeah, it was really interesting to see his trajectory towards becoming a prosecutor, right? Again, through his early years, he faced bullying quite a bit, right? Had a lot of experiences with that, be it experiencing himself or, trying to stop others from bullying people, again, that sense of justice and defending people. But yeah, even as a prosecutor, there's only so much he could do, right? People still tend to slip through. Now it's quite the development that from that point on, he finds himself in a position that he is the judge, the jury, the executioner at this point. And again, that whole concept of delete, that, this behavior has to be deleted. I really find that so interesting because, he kind of looks at it as a corruption, a virus that could, corrupt others, that could spread, that needs to be deleted. That, it's just an error in the human buildup, that he has to remove that, right? So, that aspect is really interesting as well. But yeah, they're so similar, right? Light Yagami and Mikami ended up being so similar that he actually thought it was, divine intervention, essentially. Divine justice. He thought these people that are dying, that he also kind of, looked into and researched, he thought, this is, God doing something for him. But it just happened that, they're both researching the same channels. They're both so in line that, they're looking at the same type of criminal to punish. But yeah, his interpretation of that was a bit different, right? But, essentially that's one of the reasons he makes the perfect right-hand man to God, right, to Kira. Another interesting thing is that it felt like it was more of a biopic. His backstory, the presentation of like a television biopic of a serial killer almost, right? The mind of Mikami. I could see that being the title of that biopic. I mean, yes, he's got issues, no doubt about it. But, I really like the whole aspect of him standing up, right? Even though he himself isn't really a strong individual, right? Physically, that is, but mentally, he was strong enough to stand up for others, right? That needed it. So I really like that aspect of it, right? Again, a strong sense of justice from an early age. So, of course, I applaud that. I certainly applaud that, stepping in to stop bullying, even though he knew he's going to, catch the heat for doing that. But he kept going, right? all the way to becoming a prosecutor. So yeah, you know, it's an interesting character, no doubt about it, no doubt about it. And you know, you see on the train, he steps in again to stop that, you know, little incident, you know, a bit of bullying going on there, playful bullying maybe, you know, they did seem like friends, but yeah, you know, clearly that one kid didn't like it, that his shins being kicked repeatedly. Mikami recognized that behavior, steps in. But yeah, he's certainly an interesting addition this late on in the game, and I'm kind of excited to see how this plays out, right, and how he plays into this end game essentially. And I think he is going to play a part, certainly. You know, up until this point, everything's been airtight. You know, Mikami is thinking just like Kara, just like Light Yagami. And, you know, Light Yagami's really enthused about this. He's really happy about this, that he can use this individual. And of course, discard him once the time comes, like he always does. He's a manipulator. He uses people and he discards them for his own gain, right? He's going to discard Takada as well once the time comes, if the time comes. You know, but how long can this perfect track record of being perfectly in line with Kara's thoughts or Light Yagami's thoughts can Mikami go on or stay on, right? Sooner or later, there might end up being a disconnect, right? He might think he's doing the right thing and he might think he's in line with Kara's thoughts. Sooner or later, some kind of disconnect could happen here, right? And again, you know, I feel that his Shinigami eyes are certainly a danger. You know, no Nier in this episode at all, but a quick glimpse of Mello. So, you know, of course, sooner or later, 5 episodes in, Mello is going to make his next move. He's been, you know, laying low. And of course, hopefully Nier comes back in the next episode as well. So yeah, let's see, you know, if they have an encounter with Mikami. Again, Nier kind of takes more of a laid-back approach. You know, doesn't really step into the field, but Mello does step into the field, right? So let's see how that plays out. And of course, you know, speaking of Shinigami eyes, Ryuk, haven't really heard much of Ryuk in the last 2 episodes at this point, right? He's not really playing much of a part, really, other than, you know, facilitating these abilities, right? Giving, you know, transferring the Death Note or Shinigami eyes to Mikami. But yeah, that's about it for this one. If you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you're interested in early access to the next episode right now, or perhaps even full length for this episode, consider checking out the Patreon page. The link is in the description and the pinned comment. Also, if you're into social media, I'm on Twitter. Check out the link for that. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you for joining me and thank you for your time. And I hope to see you again soon for the next one. Until then, take it easy.